Now I'm back on C377, who has decided to turn into a 5-cylinder. It might have been a 5-cylinder the whole time. I'm now finally getting it to normal idle RPM, or close to normal, and it's entirely possible that when idle was at 2000, 2500, that I just didn't notice that the car was a 5-cylinder. Anyway, it is one now, and I have already literally painfully found out that it is cylinder number 1, and painfully in the sense that I was stupid enough to get myself sparked. It was not fun, but if you're an idiot, then there is no remedy. Anyway, so I now assume that it must be the injection valve or the ejector pulse. And here's something, Noid light, N-O-I-D, and this is for Bosch. You can read it. This is for Bosch injectors. You pop this into the injector plug, and then run the engine and see if you get a spark, get your an injector pulse. Yeah, and this tells me now that the wiring is fine and I'm dealing with a bad injector, very likely. So I'm going to replace that and then we'll see. Hi, it has been about a week or maybe 2 since I last worked on the car. I was at the point where I was sure that I do have an injector signal for number 1 cylinder of C377, and I'm going to replace that injector now. Normally I would take the intake off and do all injectors and all the fuel lines and do a bit of cosmetic on the intake manifold, but unfortunately I don't have the time for that right now. I need to get this car running and running on 6 cylinders so I can further figure out why on earth this is one of these hard starters for no apparent reason. So I'll do the injector now and then we'll continue. obvious how this works. So you see the two screws here and here, which on the left, this one on the left holds the intake, on the right the exhaust, and that's how it's set up. The bad ones are typically the two front ones, this one and the one on the outside. This one. This is bad because it's blocked by the thermostat housing. So normally there would be a hex screw on the front and on the end, on the back end, but here they are all Allen screws, and it's the same on the other car that I'm working on. Anyway, so I hope to get around taking the thermostat housing off. That makes it easier, but there is one screw back here, basically the opposite of this side, where you will put it back on with 16th of turns, and it's going to take an afternoon to get it on. So I would very much like to try to avoid taking the thermostat housing off. Okay, back to 377. Okay, the manifold is out. It was no fun, but the whole thing's out. And now I can do all 6 injectors, can do a bit of cosmetics, and then we can put it back together. And I think I have already discovered why the car is starting hard. This looks like a fuel pressure regulator from BMW. And if that is the case, it would run on 2.5 bar, and the car, the 3 liter needs 3 bar. So it would point to that the car never got enough fuel, and that's why it was starting hard. Let's hope that is the solution to the problem, and we'll know once I'm done with freshening up the intake. I know it looked like I've done this for the first time in my life. I can promise you I haven't. This is probably my intake number 10, but I'm doing it so rarely, I mean every year or so, every 2 years, that I keep forgetting things, and it's still, I got it out, and it's more fiddly than really hard. Keep forgetting to remove things. But anyway, we have it here on the bench now, and I'm gonna work on it, and then we should be able to start the car if I'm right with the wrong fuel pressure regulator. I'm gonna check that right away, because that would really solve all my problems. And if this is the wrong one and I replace it and the car still doesn't start, you're gonna see a grown man crying. Then I have to hunt further. But at this point, I hope that this is the problem of the car. Anyway, if not, we're just gonna eliminate one after the other, and at some point, once you have gotten through the car, it has to run and start properly. Okay, this is the fuel rail. Unfortunately, this was not the solution. This is the correct part. But who knows, maybe it's bad. So we'll check it. So this is how these injectors are mounted. You have them sitting in this bracket here, and they are held by a large rubber and sealed by a small rubber, which is really deteriorated. Or not. Somebody tried to seal it. And then they are screwed into the injector adapter, this part, with that screw. That's all. So you have to take the rubber off, then you can pull the injector out, and that's it. And this is too completely deteriorated from the heat in the engine bay. And these are the small ones. They're quite tight and broken also. So these injectors will be replaced and they will go out for rebuild. And I can use them again on my own cars. These seals fall apart. Okay. Normally they have a crimp connection here. These are screwed. I don't know why. Maybe that's how they got them. But as I said, normally there would be a crimp connection here. There's also no Bosch number on the injector. And they don't have the right color either. They should be gray. Okay, and these are the only parts that we're going to carry over. There will be a new fuel pressure sender, fuel pressure regulator, so we know it's the correct one. This should be the correct one, but I want to know that it's the correct one and new. So that's what I'm going to do. And then the old injectors will go to the rebuilder. And then we're going to start from this from scratch. These are 3 injector holders, the metal bits of the fuel rail, and the T connection, and that is it. I have done some cleaning and painting of the intake manifold. Also did some cosmetics on the valve cover that looked horrible, just to slowly get the engine bay in shape, together with the car, getting the car running. There are a few things I want to show you on the intake, and we're going to get to that now. And then I'm going to show how to assemble the whole thing again. I just painted everything, the little injector holders, the fuel rail, metal pieces and all that. We're going to put it back together and then finally hopefully have an intake that we can put back into the car. One thing I noticed with this car, the manifold screws had little spacers on them, and the reason for that is that there are cars with and without an air injection system, secondary air injection system. Anytime I see a car without, I see screws that are too long, so my assumption is that all cars, all early cars with an unregulated non-oxygen sensor catalyst came with the secondary air injection system, and most of them have just taken it off. Problem is, of course, if you take the air injection system off, then you need shorter manifold screws in order to avoid the spacers, and I will replace the manifold screws with the correct length one, because this car does not have the air injection system. Okay, so on to doing the manifold. Okay, so this is what it currently looks like. As I said, I did some wire brush cleaning, painted it, and it's far from perfect, but it's likely it's better than it was. The things that you might want to know just for reference is that there are two return springs for the throttle. Both are getting extended when the throttle is pushed open, and both pull the throttle close. So the bigger one is between where the throttle cable adjustment goes and the throttle. Well, the throttle is actually here, but this is the lever where the gas throttle cable goes attaches to, and then this is where I said yesterday I couldn't get to that one screw unless I went through this gap, and that is the one where the other spring attaches to this little piece here. You have to go through that gap to get to the last manifold screw, and that was bent yesterday and I couldn't get through. Anyway, the second spring attaches to that, and then, as I said, both pull the throttle close. And this is the smaller, the shorter of the two springs. Also, what I have seen before is that people adjusted this screw to adjust idle, and this does not work. The car will not run properly afterwards. You can see that this is basically a throttle. The throttle closes against this piece, and this should not be adjusted unless it has been played with. The problem is that here on this side you have the throttle position sensor, the black piece here, and this is a bit ambitious to call it a throttle position sensor. The only thing it does, actually, it sort of is throttle position, but there are only 3 positions. The car is being told I'm idling or I'm at full throttle, and these are the 2 positions it has, and otherwise the engine assumes that it's somewhere in the middle between idle and full throttle, but there's only 2 positions that are measured with these 3 contacts down here. Okay, so the first thing I normally do is put the injectors back into their injector holders. For that I need new rubbers, and there's one thing to watch out for. I found rubbers that are correct specifications. The problem I can show in a moment. So you put this big rubber over the injector body. Come on. Put it in this groove here, And that was a mistake, because you have to put it into the holder first. But I'm really behaving as if I had never done this before. This is embarrassing. Okay. So the injection valve goes in here. Then this goes over. Okay, and then what happens is this rubber exerts pressure once this screw is fastened into the injector adapter. It pushes the injection valve forward. And there's one problem: these rubbers that sometimes come with injectors are too small in the outer diameter, and that means they sort of slip into this gap and don't push them against the manifold. And that means that the little seal here, that's the one for the between the injector and the injector adapter plate, that this seal will not properly work then. If that happens, you draw secondary air and the car runs too lean and has all sorts of problems. So you need the rubbers that are as big as the diameter of this. Okay, and then these can be turned, as you can see, and so the individual injection valves can be turned. Also, there is no preferred side for the injector holder. Basically, there's rotational symmetry, and you can put them in anywhere you want, except that both have to face the same direction. And of course, by this I mean up. So whatever you define as up, both injector sockets need to face in the same direction, like this. By the way, these are rebuilt injectors. This is how I get them back from the rebuilder. This is not a new injection valve. They are cleaned, painted, have new tips, and also properly crimped back here. Z. Up and down is of no consequence, except you are defining up and down, and they just need to point both in the direction that will be up in the future. Okay. 3 injector holders with injection valves. Okay, I'm now holding my pins of my ohm meter to the center and what I call the idle pin. You can see there's no resistance. Now I'm removing the throttle, and there should be infinite resistance, but for some reason I have 8 mega ohm. I don't recall if that is normal, but this would at least be an indication that the throttle position sensor is telling the engine what's happening. Now I'm going to do the other two. At the center and full throttle pin. There should be infinite resistance, which there is, and when I have full throttle it should go down to nothing, which it pretty much does. So this is a throttle at idle, but I'm touching the terminals for the full throttle position. This is full throttle, and away from full throttle, once again we have no continuity. There are 3 different metal pieces, and they're easy to recognize. The supply line is the bottom, and this is where the injectors are on. The injectors go into the engine above the supply line. The only thing that can be reversed is this one, the middle one, but this bend is intentional, and this bend has to face forward towards the throttle plate, towards the throttle body or front of the car. That is the only thing that you need to watch out for. The supply line comes in through the T intersection, goes in here between cylinder 4 and 5, and it goes out through the fuel pressure sensor that sits in line with the injection valves. One thing I can highly recommend is using a hose cutter. This makes it much easier to work with fuel line. Okay, now I hope I finally have everything I need here. I am usually working with a little bit of grease that I put on these ports just to make the rubber slide on it better. The little clamps I use are fuel injection clamps, 13 to 15 millimeter. That seems to work well. And instead of 8 millimeter fuel line, I'm using 5/16, which is, I think, 7.9 millimeter, so it's not much of a difference. And lastly, it's important that you use fuel injection hose, not fuel hose. The burst pressure of a fuel injection hose is much higher than of a regular fuel line, and this thing runs at 3 bar, which is 45 psi, and I don't remember exactly, but I think this has a 80 or 100 psi burst pressure, so that's much safer. Not much safer, this is necessary to use on a fuel injection system. I'm going to cut these hoses shorter. The problem usually is that when they are in and you're trying to pull them out, this is the reason I finally went to take the whole manifold out yesterday, is that you don't have any wiggle room there. So I typically cut these pretty short so I can take them out if I have to with this. this gives you an idea how much space you have. Okay, by coincidence I've cut this 30 millimeter from the crimp. And I'm going to test if this is working. Okay, so this is going all the way in and is not hitting the valve port. So 30 millimeter should work. Another thing I do most of the time in the engine bay, it helps to have the screws, the orientation of the clamps this way, because often things are in the way, and I have seen that if this is in the middle, it works, it's easiest to access. And putting these on is a lot harder without that tiny bit of grease. So once again, you need to turn them in the up position. And then you can tighten the clamps. But as you can see, with the 30 millimeter space, you can pull this out and have enough space back here to actually pull it out. And the other ones were so long that I couldn't yesterday. So these are the front ones, are the middle ones. Once again, tiny bit of grease around the port. turning them upwards. This is pretty good. What I also have noticed over the years is, even though I'm now tightening these pretty hard, when the rubber compresses over time, it often is necessary to retighten them after a few months, maybe even weeks. And it's important that they're seated very well. Then you can tighten them with that screw here that goes in the back of the holder. And these are two injection rolls that aren't going anywhere. You need to watch out. I could only tighten them that hard with the aluminium adapters. If you have the bakelite adapters, the black plastic type ones, you have to be extremely careful not to strip that thread in here. And I'm not saying that because I'm so terribly smart, I'm saying that because I've been stupid enough to do that. Okay, so in this case it would have been smarter if I had done this first. Now the clamps are in the way of me using my little wrench. So my little ratchet. So I'm gonna loosen them again, turn them out of the way, and then tighten them again. Come on, turn. Okay, that's tight. Of course, even with aluminium, you are not going to put them crazy tight, just so that they are really sitting well. The only thing that's important is that there is no air going in here. And since with these rubbers and these brackets, they are pressed against the back of the hole inside that adapter, that small rubber is being squeezed, and that is what seals the injector against air. That's not supposed to go in the engine. Okay. Now we need to get the fuel pressure sensor here, the regulator, and the T, the supply intersection here, and we are done. Also, once again, it pays off later to put the orientation of the clamps in a way that you think you can get to it when it's in the car. You don't want to take out the manifold every time you want to do something on the valves, or if you want to change one. And once again, I have made that mistake, and then you have no way to getting to the bloody clamp, and you do have to take the intake out as silly as or start cutting things. So this is why I try to always have them in a way that I can reach them later on. I often also do this as preventive maintenance, because if you lose fuel, or if one of these lines bursts, the exhaust is right underneath. And as I understand it, one of the 4 doors was lost this way by a fire from the engine bay. And I'm not really sure, but I think it was because of burst fuel lines. And at this point I think I'm going to replace the supply lines in the engine bay as well. They come in at the bottom of the right wheelhouse, close to the frame rail, and it's going to be the same metal hose, and it's just the same hose, same clamps, and then you know you have only good fuel lines, at least in front of the engine and in the front part of the car. The other thing that would still need to be done, and if I feel like it at some point I will do it on that car, is to replace the ones at the fuel pump, and the rest between fuel pump and between this is all metal. I just noticed that the grommets that protect the metal lines coming through the inner fender / wheelhouse have been removed. So I need to find something to put in so I can protect the fuel lines. I have now finished the line from the pressure regulator, and now I've also added a grommet to the metal line that comes through the inner fender / wheelhouse. Now I'm with the supply line that goes to the metal line coming from the back here, and with this goes to that T connection back here. As I understand it, this is a fuel pressure damper. There's another one at the tank, or at the fuel pump. Also, I do not recall, honestly, which one is the supply line in the engine bay, which one is the return line. The way the car was set up, the supply line was in front, towards the front of the car, and the rear was the one where the pressure regulator connects to. Also, I have gone a bit nuts with the valve cover. That looked awful. I've put that together with gave it a liquid paint, put a new gasket into the oil filler cap. This is what came out of it. So this too could be a potential vacuum leak, and that's also has a new seal now. And tomorrow I'm gonna start and put everything back together. And let's see, against all hope, because I have not found anything wrong with the not the wrong injectors, not, as I thought, not the wrong fuel pressure regulator. It was a 3-bar one. We'll see. Maybe the new injectors will make a difference, and the car was running. Let's hope it runs again. Hopefully that will not run any worse. So I just hope that at some point we're going to get rid of this needing 30 starting attempts for the car to run. Okay, I'll finish this tomorrow. I'm now cleaning the clamps for the airflow sensor hose, and I'm doing this with a brass wire brush, rotating wire brush on the drill, and it's quite amazing what the result is. This is where I am at the moment, and this is what it was like. And you're going to see the final result once I put it back in the car. I might or might not paint it, but I'm quite happy with that. Okay, one of the things to watch out for is that back here is the main ground for the injection system. This is the little hole back, threaded hole back here, and I'm going to go through with thread restorers. I need an M6. These are little pieces. They can either clean out the thread in a hole or a bolt. And I'm going to run this through here just to make sure everything is nice and clean, which apparently it is. Camera. So, as I said, this is the whole thing. The fuel pressure regulator, new injection valves and everything. The two return springs for the throttle, one here, one here. Then we have the throttle position sensor that only reads two positions, full throttle and idle. Down here the throttle plate stop screw that should not be messed with if it is aligned perfectly, and should never be tried to adjust idle with that. Idle is adjusted up here. You loosen that screw and then turn this worm screw as needed to adjust idle, and then once idle is adjusted, you just tighten this again so this worm screw does not move. And this is pretty much it. Yeah, I think that was it, except for what I just mentioned, the main injection ground point. And now I can start putting it back in. As I've mentioned before, the valve cover is now cleaned, painted and put back the way it was originally, black with the silver stripes here and the emblem silver, and also the fuel oil fillet caps normally silver, and I've also put a new gasket in that one because that might also be a contributing factor to bad vacuum. So I'm going to put that manifold back in, and hopefully this will make the car start better. I'm not very confident because I didn't find anything really wrong. I just hope that the new injectors and the new fuel pressure regulator make a difference. But as I said, I'm not confident that this really was the problem. But we'll see. The way I do this is, first of all, I have this long Allen socket to get underneath all of it, and it's an 8mm, and I'll put the intake on and just put everything in to the point where it's almost touching the manifold, and then wiggle it all so it's sitting properly, and then tighten them all. it's now time to see if the car starts, or in general it's time to see what I forgot to reconnect. That's more likely the case. Always the same. I kept rambling on how important the injection ground is, and I did not reconnect it. There we go. There's one. Where's the other? Okay, at least that problem's eliminated. Let's see if that helped. Just checking for fuel. Fuel. If anything, it has gotten worse. Now the question is, am I still missing something? Or did I put bad injectors in the car? Have they sort of ceased on the shelf? That's entirely possible. Not likely, I think, but possible. So I'm gonna wait until my starter has cooled down a bit again, then try it again, and if that doesn't work, then I'm gonna bite the bullet, pull out just the injectors this time, and then put new ones in and see if that makes a difference. But this is very discouraging. Okay, desperate measures. I wonder if the injectors are sticking. I might be able to shock them. I had success with this at least once, so it's not completely unreasonable. But in reality, it is just desperation, because I don't know what else it could be. This was a bit of an ordeal. Honestly, I don't know if my knocking the injectors has really helped or if that was coincidence. In any case, the car is running now. It's still starting hard, so that's still to figure out. But it's a 6-cylinder now. Instead of 2,500 RPM, it idles at 900 as it should. So I'm going to go on a test drive now, see what happens. Okay, I would definitely call this a step in the right direction. The car now is truly a 6-cylinder. It has good power. I just tried out on the gravel road here. It shifts up and down as it should. Kick down works, and if it kicks down on gravel road, it spins the tires. So works well. And as I said, RPM is now 900. Idle is now 900 RPM. You can hit the brakes without the car dying, as it did in the beginning. It doesn't die when you shift from neutral into drive or reverse. So everything now works as it should, except for the hard starting. And there is a troubleshooting manual in the Opel shop manual that I'm going to go through if it doesn't start today, tomorrow. There is still a chance that my knocking the injectors actually brought them to life. I don't quite believe it would be too easy. Well, and the other thing is I added some fuel because I automatically assumed that the fuel gauges or fuel sending units dead, like in Men in Tights, dead, D-E-D, dead. No, I automatically assumed that the fuel sending unit is bad because it's always on any of the cars I have. But this one is good. I actually put in some fuel and I do see a reading. What I don't see a reading, well, I do see a reading in the temperature gauge as well, but it's not going up. So there too, my temperature gauge is probably okay. I need a new thermostat. I'm going to do that in the next days. And then bit by bit, I'm going to get that car back to life. And as I said, hopefully at some point, starting as it should. I'll try tomorrow. See how it starts then I wait 2 days, try to start, then I wait 3 days, and then we'll see, hopefully it will run at some point properly. So at this point, maybe it will start tomorrow, and maybe that really was it, but you have seen the 70 starting attempts or however many it was. It is just not working, at least not the way it should. And this was actually worse than it was before, but that was before it actually came to life. So we'll see, and I'll keep you updated. And I want to end up with a car that runs reliably, starts reliably, and drives well. Thank you for watching, and with the thermostat I'll go on in the next video.